Hi all, it's that time of the week again. It's Thursday and this is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and tonight is March the 22nd. Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams and we're still waiting for the intel to come in, but we still have a reasonable show tonight. There's a few things I need to cover. But first we'll get into all the details and the links to the show, because we do have a lot of new members. Looks like we are some members who have been around a while are appearing to act like the new in some incidents, but there we go. The link for the show is www.spreaker.com/user 8955881. And the article's website is thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. All the archives of the shows are on there. There's a lot of articles. There's a load of Chloe stuff on self-empowerment, shadow sides and all that stuff. And you can get the live link there also. The biggest shows, for those of you new to this show and would like to catch up with what this show's all about, are also on thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. If you want to send an email in to the show for questions or comments, it's truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. We have the Facebook page, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and a Facebook social media alternative called MeWe.com. If you're having difficulty joining, send an email to the truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. We also have the People's Club donations website link and everything to do with the foundation, and that's the peoplesclub.org. Right. Intel's just coming in, so that'll be ready for the second hour. But I want to get into, before we get into the news, there's a few things I need to cover, because some of the members will have seen the fun and games on the page in the past week or so. It has increased. We are a target. Why? Because we have more nearer the truth than most. And because of my links with certain individuals, that only increases. And there's a lot of people coming in and playing games. And there's also people playing games who have been around a long time, who really should know better. But this is I'll explain why that is happening in more detail later. But I need to address a few issues that it keeps cropping up. There is a group of questions by one particular person, and judging by the way it was written, this person does not appear to be asking questions for knowledge, but direct challenging. There is a marked difference, I don't wish to denigrate that person, but I'm asking you to show more respect when you're posing your questions. The usage of quote unquote or inverted commas tells the story. I've said repeatedly on this show, I will answer all the questions, whether they're easy ones or difficult ones or even the awkward ones. They all get asked and they all get answered. But I do have objections when those questions are not questions at all, but direct allegations or attacks, like what happened on the Facebook post yesterday. That post wasn't asking for clarity, but it was posted to cause issues. Now, personally, I wouldn't mind if it was new information that needed some clarity, but it was not. And clearly that person doesn't listen to the shows, because that particular issue has been addressed numbers of times. In fact, repeat questions seem to be the order of the day recently, so much so I was going to open tonight's show with the Time Warp song. You know? Or the other incident is the show is every Thursday. The show gets posted generally of a Monday night, and the questions go on that post. But then you get people on Friday and other days posing loads of questions that were already answered in the previous or recent shows. You know, I'm not asking people to only listen to my shows. That's not the right thing to do. But please, for the benefit of the host and also to the regular members who don't wish to hear repeat questions, either listen to all the shows and then pose your question, or don't listen to all the shows and don't ask questions. I just don't have the time to do that anymore, and I have far more important things to attend to than people asking questions that have already been answered several times in the show, or people playing games on the page. This is supposed to be about our freedom and how we're going to go forward with solutions, not drama. If you want drama, there's millions of other social media sites to go and play games on. We are not a social media site. We are about solutions for going forward, period. You know, it's not easy doing these shows each week, as all show hosts will tell you. The volume of information to keep up with now is fairly extraordinary compared to just what it was a few years ago. The small d disclosure has ramped up beyond all reason. So the last thing I or any other show host for that matter needs is people playing games. Our show is different due to the levels of intel and involvement, and so that time is further consumed. I also have to work full time as well. You know, it takes a lot to do this show. Get real with their own situations. Are you interested in freedom or just creating drama? If it's the latter, it is indicative of your own life and lack of dealing with your own shadow sides. You have to address that, not me. Now, I've never been one for advertising or promoting this show. But those who have listened consistently and absorbed the information, for the most part, have now realised there is few other shows like it. For content, consistency, which is important, or accountability. And unlike many others, it's also totally free of charge, including the support given behind the scenes to many of the members. But the fact that the major announcement on our show, February the 1st, in regards to American sovereignty, has been totally ignored by all but a few of the alternative media, is a full-on confirmation that most of the alternative media sites, whether they be big, medium or small, are agency-controlled, COINTELPRO, Coven-ran or service to self. The evidence is all there now. I shouldn't have to tell you. In that one incident of the ignoring of the announcement of American sovereignty proves what I've said all along. The alternative media is corrupted way beyond I or you could imagine. I wish, when I'd said it 2 years back on the OYM show, I was wrong, and I still wish I was wrong, but it's not. The evidence is now there for all to see, and the question remains, does any of the other shows have this level of questioning or accountability? Well, clearly not. And the big question to the person asking the questions and to others is why not? Why aren't other shows not held accountable for what they're stating? We need to act a lot better in general. I'm not talking about all the members, I'm just talking generalising. You're not being fair to myself or the other members. Enough of the game playing. Right, where are we now? Some news. Now it's US Custom and Border Patrol agents have increasingly begun to search digital devices carried by travellers on international flights as they look for data, go figure, in cell phones, laptops and other electronic gadgets that can provide, what they say anyway, clues to possible terrorist attacks. Now the American Civil Liberties Union has now filed a lawsuit, jolly good, against the TSA, demanding to know why TSA security officers are also looking at data stored in digital devices carried by passengers on domestic flights. Federal agencies have published their policies regarding searches of electronic devices at international borders, the lawsuit states, but the federal government's policies on searching of electronic devices of domestic air passengers remains shrouded in secrecy. Well, go figure. Nothing changes there. And the ACLU said it has received phone calls from passengers on domestic flights complaining that their electronic devices had been searched, and the lawsuit said the civil rights group filed 2 Freedom of Information Acts requests with the TSA to get more information about domestic searches, but the group said that the December requests were ignored, go figure, and that prompted them to file the lawsuit. We don't know why the government is singling out some passengers, and we don't know exactly what the TSA is searching for on these devices. So that's another fight back by we the people. United States benefits. It's kind of extraordinary. I know there's a lot of people in this country, but it's kind of indicative of how many people are really struggling in this country also. But a snapshot of the January, just January this is, not yearly, from the Social Security Administration, about 62 million people are receiving a benefits check from the Old Age Survivors and Disability Insurance Trust. Notice it said trust. Many of these folks, especially retired workers, are reliant on their monthly stipend to make ends meet. But what is even more telling is the amount of cash leaving the Social Security coffers each month. SSA data from January shows 80 billion. 80 followed by 9 zeros. Are paid to 62 million beneficiaries. And the retirement benefits accounts for 62.1 billion. Survivors benefits 6.9, and this goes to the immediate family members of deceased workers. And disability insurance is 11 billion to the more than 10 million people who are disabled over the long term and qualify for disability insurance. Another, this was going to go in the intel because I did get to hear about it. We'll go in the news item. And this is a report that has now come out of a French-led UN Security Council issue. This goes back to 1973. and in spite of a French-led UN Security Council resolution which created a no-fly zone over Libya with the express intent of protecting civilians, in one of over the 3,000 new Hillary Clinton emails released by the State Department recently contained damning evidence of Western nations using NATO, go figure, as a tool to topple Libyan leader Muammar al-Gaddafi. The NATO overthrow was not for the protection of the people, but instead it was to thwart Gaddafi's attempt to create a gold-backed African currency to compete with the Western central bank monopoly. So there you know. These are our official documents released. And the emails also indicated that the French-led NATO military, that's important, that French-led NATO military initiative in Libya was also driven by a desire to gain access to a greater share of Libyan oil production and to undermine a long-term plan by Gaddafi to supplant France as the dominant power in the Francophone African region. An April 2011 email sent to the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton by an unofficial advisor and longtime Clinton confidant Sidney Blumenthal with the subject line "France's client and Gaddafi's gold" reveals predatory Western intentions, and the email identifies French President Nicolas Sarkozy as leading the attack on Libya with 5 specific purposes in mind. Number 1, to obtain Libyan oil. Number 2, to ensure French influence in the region and increase Sarkozy's reputation domestically, assert French military power, and to prevent Gaddafi's influence in what was considered Francophone Africa. There's also in these documents a lengthy section stating that the huge threat that Gaddafi's gold and silver reserves, which is estimated at 143 tons of gold and a similar amount in silver, and that posed a risk to the French franc, circulating as the prime African currency. So the reason why I said remember that, when it said the French-led NATO people, what is that referring to? Well, I'll tell you what it's referring to. It's the same Rothschild's private army. The Rothschilds, or one of the prominent Rothschilds, runs France. This one that used to run the UK, but it's not as prevalent anymore. And it's the Rothschilds who run NATO, their own private army, which this country has paid far too much into. Thankfully now Mr. Trump is scaling that back, and I hope we cancel our all NATO funding and pull our troops out of it. It's nothing to do with saving America, it's nothing to do with saving Europe or Africa or anywhere else, and more to do with obtaining power and stealing resources, all for the benefit of the Rothschilds empire, which is crumbling rapidly. Another one of their family homes went up for sale last week as the file sale continues. But I think it's time that the rest of the world closed down NATO, because to me that is a terrorist organisation, period. And talking about the former French President Nicolas Sarkozy, he's been arrested, taken into police custody to be questioned over allegations he received millions of euros in illegal election campaign funding from the regime of the late Libyan dictator Gaddafi. See how these two stories link up? But then Sarkozy was taking down Gaddafi. So what does this say about this investigation. Remember, I said they would all get pulled in for fraud and corruption, but it may not be the real deal. So just reading that last line. He received funding from Gaddafi when he was taking him out in 1973. Really? So Mr. Sarkozy, who was France's president from 2007 through 2012, was being questioned on Tuesday morning by police officers specialising in corruption, money laundering and tax evasion at their offices in the western suburb of Nanterre. And as part of the inquiry into Gaddafi and others in Libya illegally financing his winning election campaign, the investigation is potentially France's most explosive political financing scandal in decades. This is going to expose the Rothschilds again. Mr. Sarkozy has repeatedly denied the allegations. Yeah, well, he would, because he's just a puppet, and dismissed the claims as grotesque. I don't think so, Mr. Sarkozy, given the report above. And this is the first time police have questioned Sarkozy over the allegations, and a French inquiry into alleged illegal campaign funding, which was opened back in 2013, and it's finally arrested the former French president. So, more big names in the public eye anyway, being taken down. In essence, these are the minions. Where are we next? The UK and the EU, and the Brexit rolls on. Christ, I was still in CV when that was ongoing. And I started. Anyway, the UK and EU have agreed on a large part of an agreement that will lead to an orderly withdrawal of the UK from Europe, according to them anyway. And Brexit negotiators Michael Barnier and David Davis said the deal on what the UK calls the implementation period was a decisive step, but issues are still to be resolved. No change there, so you can just keep it going a bit longer. And that includes the Northern Ireland border. And the transitional period is set to last from March the 29th, 2019 to December 2020, and is intended to smooth the path of a future permanent relationship. Mr. Barnier said there was also an agreement on the rights of 4.5 million EU citizens in the UK and 1.2 million UK citizens in the EU after Brexit, including giving EU citizens arriving in the UK during the transition the same rights and guarantees as those who arrived before Brexit. It seems the American fear porn program has now crossed the shores and is operating fairly vociferously over in England. More than 400 schools in England this week received a hoax email threatening to detonate a bomb, hello Texas, on school grounds if money was not handed over to them. A number of schools were evacuated after receiving the emails which demanded cash from them, and Humberside police said counter-terrorism colleagues had advised that the threats were not credible, but schools in London, Manchester, Northumbria, North Yorkshire were among those that received the email. Police forces in Cumbria, Cambridgeshire, Humberside, Hertfordshire, Lincolnshire, Derbyshire and Avon and Somerset also issued statements saying schools and colleges in their areas had also been targeted. So these were sent by emails. Why haven't they caught them yet? They track everyone's email. It has an IP address. And that they haven't caught these people yet. That smell a bit off. It does to me. It's not a single email that can't be read. Even Anne thought she could get away with that and didn't. You know, the emails are easy to track. And if they're not tracked, then this is state-sponsored fear programming. That's the top and bottom of it. And the UK, like the USA, are now using kids to promote their agendas. All very tomorrow belongs to me. Methinks. Vladimir Putin. Yeah. It's indicative of certain countries that didn't congratulate him. Of course, the UK being has now taken the same steps as CNN, and everything's Russia's fault. But world leaders have this week been congratulating Vladimir Putin on his election for a new 6-year term as the Russian president. But Western leaders have been slow to respond amid recent tensions. Chinese President Xi Jinping said his country's partnership with Russia was at its best level in history. But European observers said that while the poll was conducted efficiently, there was lack of a genuine choice. Perhaps Mr. Putin's rather popular over there. He gives away free land. It's not as negatively communistic as it's made out to be. They've had ET disclosure, did you know? We won't get to hear about that. It's on their mainstream TV and has been for numbers of years. Mr. Putin got more than 76% of the vote, the official results show, and he said he was considering changes to his government, including the post of Prime Minister. Former President Dmitry Medvedev has held the post since he changed places in 2012 with Mr. Putin, who has now ruled the country as either president or prime minister since 1999. The main opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, was barred from the race, according to the Western media. Perhaps he was corrupt. Here's something a bit more positive. Doctors have announced that stem cell transplant could be a game changer for many patients with multiple sclerosis. Results from an international trial show it was able to stop the disease and or improve the symptoms, and it involves wiping out a patient's immune system using cancer drugs and then rebooting it with a stem cell transplant. Now, there's been a guinea pig, a good guinea pig as it turns out, and Ms. Louise Willett in the UK, who is now completely symptom-free following this surgery. She said it feels like a miracle. A total of 100,000 people in the UK have MS, which attacks nerves in the brain and also the spinal cord. And just over 100 patients took part in the trial in hospitals in Chicago, Sheffield, Uppsala in Sweden and Sao Paulo in Brazil. They all had relapsing, remitting MS, where attacks or relapses are followed by periods of remission. And the interim results were released at the annual meeting of the European Society for Bone and Marrow Transplant. So hopefully there seems to be a a lot of good aspects to do with those stem cells. There'll be pluses and there'll be cons depending on the symptoms and the severity of it. But that's the type of research we should be funding, not MK Ultra and let's mess with genetics and all that other nonsense that is largely weaponized. How about we do pure research for the improvement of health for the people and not weaponizing things? But maybe that's a bit too much common sense. Well, it's now come to light, go figure, this is another one, that the lawyer involved in the Stormy Daniels "I shagged Donald Trump 12 years ago" story is actually on the payroll of Joe Biden and Rahm Emanuel. Oops. It doesn't take too much to see who is behind that load of BS, does it? You know, who cares who Trump's slept with as long as they were adults? I don't. I'm more interested in what he's doing for the people of this country and afar. What he does in his bedroom, I don't particularly care, as long as it's not kids. Back to the UK again, and the fascist regime over there, operating as a government. Boris Johnson has likened the way President Putin is promoting the World Cup in Russia to Hitler's notorious use of the 1936 Berlin Olympics. Really? The Foreign Secretary said Labour MP Ian Austin was completely right to say Russia's president wants to gloss over his brutal, corrupt regime. Really? And Boris Johnson said that he would have an urgent conversation with Russia about the safety of supporters at the tournament. A Russian foreign ministry spokeswoman said he was poisoned with hatred, and a Downing Street spokesman confirmed Mr. Johnson was speaking on behalf of the government. Really? You know, these are the same, for American listeners, these are the same party, conservatives, who were hobnobbing before, during and after the Second World War with the SS. These people are out and out Nazis. They always were and still are. And the Russia thing is getting beyond a joke now. It's blame Russia for everything. Well, perhaps Britain and America need to look closer to home. Given all the tracking devices and the Britain is the most prevalent in the uses of cameras for tracking people. We found a report this week that the police have lost track of 485 registered sex offenders across Britain, including rapists and pedophiles. Have they gone missing on purpose? One has to ask the question, because they may talk in higher circles. Question mark. So forces across the UK were asked to reveal a number of registered sex offenders whose whereabouts were unknown in January. Figures released by 41 police forces show the number of convicted sex offenders that their whereabouts are unknown is 485, which is a jump of more than 20% in the last 3 years. And the Metropolitan Police said it didn't know the whereabouts of a further 227 registered sex offenders, including 38 who had been missing for at least 8 years. GCHQ over there, you know. And they can't track people in what is essentially a tiny island. Fights belief. And these figures come as victims of black cab rapist John Warboy's campaign to overturn the decision to release him from prison. Police did not name the missing sex offenders, which is completely different to America, where they're all listed and named. In the UK, it's the names of the sex offenders are hidden under the Data Protection Act. And talking of police, if the time okay. This is to me, is a good step forward between the police and the public. And up in Alaska, Sitka, they've created a project called PACT, the Police and Citizens Together project, that was organised by concerned citizens and the Alaskan Sitka Police Department. And this was due to a rise in allegations and concerns surrounding the police department's abuses and the subsequent cover-ups. And while alleged abuses are handled within the courts and the internal parts of the police departments, the members and volunteers of PAC were also prevalent. And the project seeks to eliminate such incidents from taking place and avoiding such so-called cover-ups by placing citizens and police officers together. Good move. It should be rolled out in every county. I don't know how you can have a situation, well, you do, because we're living in a corrupt society where the police are responsible for investigating themselves. Yeah. That has to stop going forward. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has reportedly bragged this week to multiple parties that Jared Kushner, Mr. Trump's son-in-law, was in his pocket, citing a source who speaks often with confidence of the Saudi and Emirate rulers. And CBSN joined a Saudi report on Thursday, this morning, describing Kushner and the Crown Prince as having a very special and close relationship. And it reported that after Kushner made an unannounced trip to Riyadh in October, the prince, known as MBS, began his crackdown, and further, that during Kushner's visit, it was all unveiled. Maybe this is why Mr. Kushner's not involved anymore. But Mr. Kushner was not only supported the crackdown, but also discussed specific names with the Crown Prince. And these figures, Mr. Emmons said, who is part of the Intercept report, said we're disloyal to MBS, and which is the Prince, and we're agitating against his succession. Kushner had been briefed on this information on the presidential daily brief before his security was downgraded, and the Crown Prince has been telling his confidence that Kushner passed on the information. Oops. And we have another resignation. There'll be some breaking news in the intel of a higher level resignation. Some of you may already know. But the president's lead lawyer for the special counsel investigation, John Dowd, resigned today. And this is days after the president called for an end to the inquiry, which is obviously being conducted by Mr. Mueller, TikTok. Mr. Dowd, who took over the president's legal team last summer, had considered leaving several times in recent months and ultimately concluded that Mr. Trump was increasingly ignoring his advice. And now, under Mr. Dowd's leadership, Mr. Trump's lawyers had advised him to cooperate with the special counsel, Robert S. Mueller III, who is investigating Russia's election interference and possible ties to Trump associates, as well as whether the president obstructed the inquiry. Mr. Dowd's departure comes as the president has made it clear he's seeking a more aggressive response to Mr. Mueller's investigation. Like I said, TikTok. So, was it more Manchurian candidates or more crisis actors in the shenanigans that took place in Texas and Maryland this week? Same time bombs start going off in the USA. We get bomb threats to 400 schools in the UK. Do you think it's a coincidence? I don't. Now, the Maryland issue has already been squashed news-wise. I would watch the Texas incident also, given the alleged person who was involved in the bombings decided to blow himself up. All very convenient, nice and clean, and on we go to the next fear porn. But the question now is, are we going to ban bombs? I expect to see 1 million kids marching next week to ban bombs. After all, they kill people. I wonder if the military would like, or the media would like that. I am being sarcastic, mind you, just in case people miss it. This is just come in. California's latest evacuation program has been issued by the National Weather Service of Sacramento, that the Moccasin Dam in Chulo Moon, whatever that, some county anyway, I can't pronounce that, is on the verge of imminent failure. The dam's floodwaters will be contained in the Don Pedro Reservoir, which sits a mile downstream from it, and a flash flood warning has been issued for that particular county. Tuolumne. It's probably not the right one, but I think people will get it. I've never heard of that county before. And some evacuations are now underway. I wonder will those people be returned? And according to the Sheriff's Office, precautionary evacuations are being conducted at Moccasin Point Campground, and facilities downstream of the dam along the creek have been evacuated. Imminent dam failure. Imminent? I haven't heard that in a while. Of Moccasin Reserve Dam, and floodwaters will be contained by the Don Pedro Reserve 1 mile downstream. So that's a warning for people in California who are listening, or that's another evacuation. An increasing level of evacuations in California, once warned about by this particular show host as far back as 2014. Right, we're going to have a music break, and I think I've got some intel in. Yes, we do. including another executive order by Mr. Trump that's going to have wide-ranging effects. Where are we? Let's play this one. This was sent in by one of the members. Yes, indeed. When the world gets in your face, we say, have a nice day. Well, the world's been getting, or certain elements of the world's been getting in our face for far too long. And we did say that this month would be an indication of how things go forward. And certain things would be happening and taking place, largely behind the scenes, which frustrates some, but only because you really don't understand the depths and levels that this fight is being taken to. It's extraordinary in its scope, and you would probably need a number of films on the levels of the number of Star Wars films to cover what has been going on behind the scenes. And I know people say, well, you know, we want to see something public, but it has to be done in a certain way. You may like this intel. Well, there's been an executive order today, a memorandum done by Mr. Trump in support of the trust and other things that's ongoing. And this is that particular memorandum is to do with the issues with the military hardware deal. That is now about to be resolved. It is a stalling certain actions taking place in this country, possible certain announcements also. That has to be rectified, not only for the benefit of America, but also for the benefit of China, because they don't want rogue elements running around their part of the world either, with a whole heap of military hardware. So the executive order will take care of that deal, and it also has implications for the Chinese elders and their failure to perform. Yes, Operation Stupidity took place again this week, and Operation Stupidity failed again. Now, with regards to what's going on in the banking, is the trust is still fighting on all levels. However, we are now getting some help from the people that used to work for, wait for it, the factions. Oops. Oh boy. The faction, there's elements in the factions now that have stepped down and are willing to come and help us due to the failure of the Chinese elders, supported by the Rothschilds, to deliver. And if you think the turnover rate in the American government positions is kind of like musical chairs, I've been notified it is nothing, and I repeat, nothing compared to what is going on in the high-ranking positions in the factions. The factions war has ramped up beyond all reason, and these are not lower minions, these are the top ones. did say that this had to take place. We have to clear out. There was, once that initiative was indicated around the just before Christmas, I said nothing will be the same going forward. Consequences of actions will be forthcoming, and these people have blocked and blocked and blocked and blocked. Well, Mr. Trump has issued executive orders against it, which now includes treason and sedition. And one of the examples of what's going on in the factions is Mr. Cheney has been relieved of his position within the Black Dragon family. So he has been excommunicated twice in the last 2 weeks. Yes, Drake. So Cheney is now being targeted by his own faction. These people are not going to survive. We did give them the opportunity to step down gracefully. They chose to throw it in our faces. And like I've said in previous shows, we can play the long game. They can't. So the Chinese elders who have been feeding everyone the tomorrow game, it's happening tomorrow, it's happening tomorrow. You've heard all the RV gurus on the internet. Yeah, it's coming tomorrow, 9 o'clock. It might be 3 o'clock. Well, no, it's probably tomorrow. And it just goes on and on and on. Those people at the top, the Chinese elders, who have been promising forever on the RV, have now gone into hiding due to non-payment again this week. Yet again, an example of their own people are now targeting them, never mind the trust. Now, the trust has received a number of calls this week from different colours of dragon. The real ones are blue, green and black. All others are bogus, period. And so far, one of those groups looks viable. That's all. But they'll have to fly straight. Don't think we're backing down in any way. We're not. We don't have to. They do. And if they don't fly straight, they'll get dropped as well. It's as simple as that. We're not mucking about anymore. It's game on, and they've lost. Make no mistake about it, they've lost. Now, today, Kim and the team warned the dragons, and listen closely. Either they cooperate, or the trust will sell JP Morgan, Wells Fargo and Bank of America to the American government for $1 each. I'll repeat that again. If the dragons don't cooperate, the trust will sell JP Morgan, Wells Fargo and the Bank of America to the American government for $1 each. There goes all your assets. This is far bigger than people think. As this is where all their money laundering comes from, those particular banks. The income from the black market uranium arms deals all the way to selling drugs. So selling these banks to the American government gives full access to all levels of agencies to their accounts. So if any people, and I'll use that term lightly, any people in Langley 2, the DEA, the military, the FBI, and Homeland Security who work in any of these industries on their behalf want to clear our funds, we can forget we had this conversation. If not, that is what we will do. You have 7 days to comply. After that, we're selling the banks to the government. A further statement to these people: there will be no more games playing with the wire transfers. We know all 150 banks where you do your dirty laundry, and will have no fear of selling any or all of them. These banks are all not solvent and should all be actually shut down. It's only the clowns keeping it going with the illusion of assets. 7 days to comply, or we sell the whole lot to the American government for $1 each. The trust holds all the stock certificates and the capital of all those 150 banks. So it's time to buy or time to die. It's as simple as that. You unhook the blocks on the transfers that should be made available to the governments around the world and to the people, or all your banking institutions will be gone within 7 days. Have a nice day. This will further decrease the power and control of the military-industrial complex that's ran everything rogue in this country also. Now, the breaking news that some of you may have heard, and as was forecasted on this show many weeks back, General McMaster has resigned and will be replaced by John Bolton as the National Security Advisor. Also in Fox News tonight, Mr. Hannity announced something that was already announced in our show last week. Seems Fox are a bit behind our show, that the wall that Mr. Trump is planning to build has been funded and the go-ahead is imminent. So that's the intel for this week. We did say we wouldn't muck about anymore. A month. There is much going on. Some of you may not think it is. I know it is. The silence, there has been an eerie silence all week. When you Get that? That means there's chaos elsewhere. And boy, is there chaos. Factions are crumbling by the hour. Factions are shooting each other, including within their own faction, on a daily basis. And this is kind of what I forecast. Remember when we had Shane on, he felt there will be a trimming of the fat. And that was a fair assessment of the cabal because they're over bloated. And I said it wouldn't just trim the fat, they would eat the lean to a point where there's only a very few left with no wealth, no assets, no power, and no control. And that's where we're heading. So, to the ones who think there's not much going on publicly, it all depends on your own perception. Like I said, there's a perceived lull, and the reason for it is the top end of the cabal are being addressed. They're largely the names you don't know. That's why it's not public. But once that is completed, and we're not given timescales or dates, I don't expect it to go on years. It could be a small amount of months. It could be 1 week. It could be even Drake time. That will be right one day. But once the top end are addressed and crushed, and they will be crushed, then you will start to see the public version. Because the lower minions, whose names are more familiar to most of you, will be dealt with in a more speedier manner. Like I said, I'm uncertain of the timescales as it stands, but our show will likely get to know when things are rolling and when the pace starts to increase. Message to the prominent names of the lower minions. People might think they're big names, they're not. Who think they can run away to foreign shores and be safe from arrest or removal. Message to those people: you won't be. You just won't. All right, let's get into some op-ed pieces, some things I need to cover. Okay, the time. I mentioned earlier we're currently in another heavy frequency wave period, and that is dividing things up again. It's clearly dividing up the factions, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, but think of it as more wheat and chaff. And these episodes will increase in intensity and frequency as time moves on. Regular listeners will know that this show has warned of many things ahead of time, and I've watched it all unfold sufficiently to see a pattern for them to follow now. And a key aspect of this piece I'm going to say is the psychological side of things. Many people are now seeing and experiencing some of the behavioural aspects that was put forward as a likely event from May 5th, 2015 onwards. For those that are new to the show, and there are many, I had warned of turbulent times ahead whereby a volume of information and disclosure would ramp up and would be way beyond what you would expect or be able to deal with. I also warned that it may be a case where you will lose many of your friends, family. We may consider them as family in this reality, but it's not always the case on a wider scale. Some have family elsewhere, and some have soul families that are here, but they are not aware of. Many are finding each other, and also loved ones. Now, to counteract all this, I asked for all to work on their shadow sides and do their inner work. And I think most are now familiar with that terminology, for me to not go too much further into that. And to help people, we decided after that particular show to prepare a load of documents on how to tackle it and how to go about dealing with not only your shadow and inner work, but a whole heap of other stuff. We felt it was important. We knew what was coming up. And so Chloe largely took on that task to write it all up and compile it. And I chimed in here and there just to round off some of the edges when time allowed. Now, all of those documents are available on the Facebook page. It's also on the Think Different site and is now going onto a blog site Chloe has created called oneheartspirit.blogspot.com. This has many aspects to it, doing your shadow work, as this in general terms is something only you can do. Yes, the documents and people can help you along the way, and we've tried that with the documents and also helped quite a number of people privately with their varying issues. But the one thing from a psychological aspect that most will overlook is dealing with your own shadow sides and traumas is a personal responsibility. And too often society has dissolved their own responsibility in life and handed it over to governments, churches, teachers, doctors, lawyers, personal trainers, psychologists even, to run their lives. And I think we can all agree this has not served us well. And I think all who listen to the show would agree with most of that, if not all of it. So dealing with your shadow sides is your responsibility. And this will help you going forward with regards to your own personal responsibility. I am aware, as I've had to go through it myself, I'm no different to anybody else. Dealing with this stuff comes with much pain, much angst, and can be very uncomfortable for all who go through it. People may think, well, I'm okay, it's all in the past and I'm not too bothered about it. But then wonder why they're being triggered on certain things on an all too frequent basis. Is that the world conspiring against me? No, it's your own self telling you you haven't addressed these issues. And what happens then is you tend to overreact to a situation with a veracity that doesn't match the situation that has arisen. It's out of all context. But the reality is it has been taken out of context deliberately by the individual. Why? To mask their own illusion of having dealt with it. The self-lies. In observer mode, you can see it all play out. But if you are involved in it and you become mired in it, the situation looks and feels bizarre as it doesn't make sense. And the overreaction or the angst that most project to cover it. helping people dealing with their shadow sides comes at a great cost. I know that personally. The people being helped, and a psychologist will tell you this, the same thing. The people who are being helped very often turn on the people who's helping them. Never understood that, why that takes place. You help people and you get attacked. Yeah. Why don't they attack the ones that are not helpful, the service to self people? But this is all down to projection. And so it can be rather uncomfortable for those not only who are dealing with their own shadow sides, but the ones that are helping them as well. But it can also be very rewarding watching another person find their true path. And if you're looking for an obvious example, look at last week's show, An Evening with Thomas and Glenn Connon. And I know he'll know I'll be honest and state he led a fairly hectic life, a traumatic and drama-filled life, which at one point it appeared he had a disregard for others in a somewhat selfish lifestyle. But he also realised he had a complete disregard for himself as well. That's the key. The realisation is like the alcoholic. Oh, I don't drink too much. I'm fine, just get me another beer. Until they realise they have a problem. There is no problem to them. Once they realise, then the healing can start. And that realisation by Glenn was the start of the healing of the self. And the idea that people can't or won't change in one lifetime is a complete and utter myth. And he was testimony to that on that show. He admitted he'd gone the wrong way, the wrong path, and thought, I'm not going there anymore. He kind of reassessed of where he was at and took the leap forward into the unknown like a giant black hole. Except unlike Mr. Hawkins, Glenn found on the other side of the black hole was a white hole. Oh, kudos to him. My own lifestyle as a teenager was not great either, safe to say. I was the kid who all the parents didn't want their child to play with, because I often got them into mischief with my sense of adventure and bizarre ways of finding things to annoy people with, older people. Not necessarily the age, just adults. But I turned it all around, and all people can do that. Just takes the effort, including cabal minions. Not so much the ones at the top, but the lower ones. Now, given the intel, I wrote this piece a couple of days ago. Given the intel has just come in, it seems some of them are. Should we lynch them all, or should we welcome them with open arms? Everyone will have their own opinion on that. Of course, a lot depends on what they've been involved in. Financial skullduggery and money laundering is one thing that may be forgivable on a certain level. Child porn and child sexual behaviour is another. Those people will be dealt with. So So I hope that piece helped. And go and look at Chloe's documents. She's just done what felt like an encyclopedia. And some people are going through that now, and put a little bit of effort in. Glenn will tell you how rewarding that is. He'll also tell you it's not an easy journey. But the problem we're facing on a bigger picture scale is like what we faced, when I say we, I mean humanity faced 16,500 years ago. Those people then couldn't deal with pain and trauma, and they took the pill, the City of Light pill. All the trauma went away, and a life of illusion followed. So we have to go back to that time and reintegrate our own pain and trauma, process it, and release it. We can't carry on with the masks of illusion. You want truth? Fine. You also need to know your own truth. As most people are not telling themselves the truth. And most people are projecting an illusion, the mask of illusion, to other people, that they're this and that they're that, when they're not. And we've all done that. Played an actor's role, like a chameleon, depending on the people we meet. Well, the key is not being a chameleon. The key is fixing the self and then being the self. Many people will remember my first few radio shows and being quiet and a bit nervy, and then slowly but surely more of the real me came out, which is the fun aspect and the funny quotes, and that's just me being me, because I've now became comfortable in my own skin. If you're not comfortable in your own skin, you're not pushing forward the real you. That's a crime against yourself. The biggest crime is you not being yourself. Right, I received an email, and I thought I should address this, and the person asked why I kept referencing German people quite often, and perhaps I was being unfair on the German people, and I will say that is a fair comment. I do reference them quite a lot, and the reason is we have a massive problem in this country, and have had a massive problem in this country due to Operation Overcast and Operation Paperclip that flooded America with outright Nazis and has taken over this country and created the Fourth Reich. They're now going down, but only a very few Americans are actually aware of it, including ones in the alternative media. If you ask the average person, do you think the Fourth Reich will start? They'll all say no. It started 70 years ago with Paperclip. Right under your noses. And that's why I keep referencing it, to remind people that the enemy is within these borders. Because the media keeps telling us it's the Russians, it's the Muslims, it's the Chinese, it's the Mexicans, you name it. When the real problem is the descendants of the SS right under our noses in Virginia. That's why I keep referencing the Germans, because they need to be dealt with in this country. The Zionists need to be dealt with in this country also. They're the two most prominent. The Jesuits kind of got knocked out of the game in America a couple of years back. And so that is kind of why. But yes, I go along with that, and I do understand perhaps it's unfair on some German people, but I think most people realise I'm talking about the Nazis and not German people in general. But it's all down to people not being aware of the Nazi element in this country running it. I'm not going to get into names, but yes, I've received a number of private messages, and yes, I am aware of the turmoil involving a number of high-profile alternative media people that are being implicated in distributing child porn and making money from it, general porn, and also money laundering and possible murder. Now, all this was allegedly ran through their radio show servers and domain names, and the FBI is now investigating the links of connections that involves issues stemming out of Florida. And before anyone freaks out, this original story broke long before THI and does not affect me in any way, apart from I have a close friend that is linked with it. I don't believe he's involved, but I will let it all play out. And the UK and also China. Now, I'm not prepared to speculate on this in any shape or form. I have in the past been made aware of it, of at least one name being involved in something similar to the allegations being made. But I will wait to see how it all plays out. But if it is carried through and proven, some of the biggest names in the alternative media will no longer be on the internet or free. I've only addressed this tonight as it was brought to my attention, and until something concrete is forthcoming, I will be commenting no further. And at this point, I'm going to make my position rather clear. For those of you who think I may not, this is going out to Randy Morgans. That was to Randy Morgans. Right, let's get on with some more interesting stuff. A few bits here and there before we get into the Q&A. One of the things that's come up in the past, and I've forgotten many of the names, but given that particular last piece of certain high-profile alt media names that have been alleged implicated in certain wrongdoing, and then you start to look up different names and realize how many of those names are not the real ones. Michael Tsarian, real name Brian Heatley. Jordan Maxwell, real name Russell Pine. Kerry Lynn Cassidy is a fake name. In fact, if you type in Kerry Lynn Cassidy, you'll come up with a porn actress, which may or may not be interesting. Sean Stone, Oliver Stone, is not the real name. It's Sean and Oliver Silverstein. Henry Deacon is another one of the Kerry crew. David Wilcock, rumoured to be his real name, is Eric. Cara St. Louis is not a real name. It's Cara Orendorff. And there's many more. But you have to wonder why, in this day and age, why they all still have fake names, like stage names. Understand the Henry Deacon. You know, some of the early stuff of Project Camelot. You know, those people, and some of them were BS, but some of the information wasn't. Kind of put their neck on the line going back to 2006. Because there was very few in the alternative media, not like it is now. There's volumes of us. And it was far easier to take people out. You know, but here we are 12 years later with a vast amount of protection, and these people are still coming out with false names. The question is why? There's people with fake names in our Facebook group. Again, why? I can understand it many years ago. Not no more. Not when they're losing. Now, Mr. Zuckerberg on Facebook, this is why we set up the MeWe. Told you we were ahead of the game. But the silence of him this week, although he has come out today, and not really said much, but it is indicative of what's going on the behind the scenes stuff. Now, what I've been made aware of this week from sources, more than one, is Bill Gates of Microsoft was summoned to the White House this week by Trump at very short notice. I suggest the clock may well be ticking on both of them. Case of watch this space. Now, the Facebook stock itself is going down, and the sell-offs are underway, including by Zuckerberg himself. And it's collapsing in on itself, including our own Facebook page, riddled with agents, people thinking it's a social media site. It's not. I've said this before. It's about solutions and highlighting how we can gain our freedom and warning of those preventing it. We've got private splinter groups being formed inside the group. How is that helping the collective when people are splintering off the main group? It's supposed to be about us all coming together. You know, I do get there's personal conflicts. There's always personal conflicts. But we're all going to have to learn to work together one day. Unless we want to repeat the same divide and conquer the cabal have done. And there's a lot of people who are projecting at each other for no apparent reason. And it doesn't look good on the Facebook page. Right. I've been sent a few things this week, and another one that came to my attention, and the latest round of complete bullshittery Her Royal Highness Prime Minister Diana Urban. Really? Prime Minister of what, I might add? Who knows? In fact, really, who cares? You know, we've had a load of these over the last 4, 5, 6 years. But it was interesting, this one was posted and promoted on Anna von Reitz's page. As this is the same Anna von Reitz and her sidekick, Mr. Belcher, who labels himself as the President of the United States of America. Really? Then we had Keenan, thinking he's the M1 when there's 73 of them running around. Karen MacDonald, top clan mother, or whatever that means. Mr. Sino, Mr. Sukarno, OITC, and a load of unknown Filipino head of the world, head of this and head of that. Pindar. All titles of self-importance everywhere. But what use are these titles going forward? You know, how have all the titled people acted on this planet in recorded history? Have they ever done anything for the public ever? Nope. So why would a general member of the public want to bestow themselves with titles? Because it's not something I would be proud of and advertising in my book anyway. But ignore that drivel. There'll probably be more, you know, head of giraffe, and of course she paid the price, she's going to prison. And there's going to be a load of other alternative media people going to prison. The clean-up is not just the top end, the minions. It's going to clean up the alternative media because there's a number of them that have played the game. The funds, well, given the threats that come out the intel, they may not be that far off. And but I want to make sure that people don't think just by getting funds is going to fix everything. It's no. And that's why I mentioned earlier on the shadow sides and doing your inner work. And I also mentioned the very first show, THI, about thinking and acting different, because only that way, and a complete change of mindset that you have now, will fix things going forward. We have to address the people who have ego issues, the people who have envy issues, the greed people, service to self. Each individual has to address their own way forward, but you can only do that with a change of mindset. And too often people get embroiled and they don't know what they're talking about, and thinking of basically replicating the old model that we have to run the People's Club in the same way as every other corporation. No, we're not. We're going to run it in a better way, and depending on the level of funding, on what we fund in, I would like to see those companies do the same thing. You can't run it the same way they have. It's failed. The only thing that's kept it going is them looting the system, and particularly looting us. So you think being funded to run a business is going to make you a millionaire? It's wrong. Comfortable living? Fantastic. That's all any of us need. A comfortable living. There's 60-70% of the world that don't even have that, remember. No roof over their head, no clean water. In fact, some hardly have any water at all. No clothing, no money. So they have no option but to scrounge off the land. That has to change. I said last week, we in the Western world live like kings in comparison to other people. Some may not think or agree with that. You try going living in Africa for a week where you have to walk 20 miles with a bowl on your head for some water for that day, and then repeat it again the following day. It's absolutely shocking in this technological day and age that we have between 40 and 60% we don't have access to clean water. It's a water world. So if you don't have access to water, and bearing in mind that our own vessel is 80 to 90% water, it needs the water. And then you've got clowns in Nestle, who personally I would have hung him for treason not only against his country but the whole planet, when he turned around and says it's not a human right to have water. That guy should have been lynched. But these are the mindset of the psychopath, passed down by the Draco and the parents and the covens. They don't care about society, they never have. But if we're going to go forward in a better way, we have to care about society more. Not them, because they won't. We do. Right. Should I have a music? No, we're probably going to questions. So I've got a musical piece prepared for some of the questions. What is going to happen to the federal land? Will we get it back? Yes, it'll be repurposed. Is my knowledge that the BLM have been dealt with and are part of the trust. There is issues with the Fed part of it, not the BLM, and they are now being dealt with. When will they be dealt with? Good question. I don't know. There's so many things that have to be dealt with from the top end before we get anywhere near the lower minions and then the benefit of the people. I know we all want to start seeing mass arrests and this done and that done, but we had to change the plan and go top down because of the need to do so. They forced their own hand by playing games with humanity. What do you think of the new Bank of Joy that the Dutch whistleblower Ronald Bernard is trying to establish? I've heard of him. I haven't listened to any of his videos. I don't have the time to listen to other material these days. We have a lot of Dutch listeners, and the consensus from them is that he's another cabal agent in disguise. Not all of them, but that's the consensus. Whether that's correct or not, I'm not too sure. Can you share with us the high-level design of the new financial system? No, I don't know it. I know of it. I don't know the inner workings. You will have to be the trustee to know that. And whilst we're in contact with her, she's got far too many things to deal with than give me details of something that's not, at this point, too relevant. What are the main aspects that will change in order to allow it to work without corruption and greed taking over again? Well, the intel kind of described that. If we take over, if they don't play ball this week and we take over all the banks, there's the option of shutting them all down and starting new banks and transferring the people's funds over, including the trust funds. There's no guarantee in life that the general public pushed into the same position, high-level positions, because there will be a number of positions that need to be replaced once it's all completed. It could well be that the American government is decimated if all reports are correct. So then we're going to need new politicians. We're going to need new top brass in the military, new top brass in the agencies. But there's no guarantee that we're not going to repeat what they did. And this is why it's so important that people have a complete change of mindset on all levels. Because one of the most ridiculous things that we the people can do is repeat the same mistakes the Illuminati, which became the factions, made by trying to replicate the previous power structure. They failed. The parents, the covens, and the Illuminati have all crashed. Why? Because they carried on the same system when they didn't know how to, really, particularly on the financial system, they didn't know how it worked. So that's our test. Are we going to replicate the same corruption and greed? Or are we going to change completely and go, let's make it all even? And some may accuse me of being slightly communistic over that. But what's wrong with everyone having a reasonable amount and not a greed amount and a load of have-nots? As a CEO of a company, do you really need to be earning over 100,000, or could you put some of that back to help other people earn 30 to 50,000 a year instead of $8 and $9 an hour? Change of mindset. Eliminating the Federal Reserve System was one, and returning the control of the currency back to the sovereign government. Was there a rebalancing of global currencies based on in-ground assets and a real GDP? Eliminating fractional banking and others. That is all being thrashed out as we speak. Like I said, this will take time because of the depth of it. It's not just America. I know most people who listen to this show are Americans and are more interested in America, But this involves all 209 countries. And it has to be done right. You can't just have America being operating in a fair, transparent way if the other 208 are still playing rogue systems. So it has to be, there's a lot of work still to be done, and we have to be patient, myself included. But the Federal Reserve may get shut down, and it could be repurposed. Whatever's the smoother transition, which may lead further down the line of eliminating the Federal Reserve as a name altogether. They may decide to eliminate it straight off. Personally, I would eliminate it straight off, because I think it has a stigma with this country. The Federal Reserve has damaged all 209 countries. Personally, I think it should be shut down and wiped from history. As I understand it, there will be some sort of rebalancing of global currencies, and there will be trust assets based on in-ground assets. And one of the things I'd suggested a few years ago, and I mentioned it back on CV, is maybe the trust could give each country 2 years GDP. As it turns out, they're going to give 3. Now, to me, but I'm not making the decisions, I do have an input which then gets relayed. To me, if the trust is given each country 3 years GDP, then each country should close down their relevant taxation, because your GDP is every cent or pound or euro or ding or dong or zims and all that nonsense. It's already in it. So for 3 years, why not give the public a full-on tax break? What a difference that would make. In essence, that could be then your Nasara not paying tax for 3 years. Because if the trust's given the country 3 years GDP, they've had all the income money. So why do they need to collect more? I hope that answers your question. Fractional banking, I don't know too much about that, but these betting procedures and gambles that banks take, that will be curtailed or eliminated permanently. Is the senior executive service being dismantled, and if so, how exactly is that being accomplished? It's possible. I'm not prepared to comment on ongoing or things that may and may not be taking place. The problem is where that information came from. That site has COINTELPRO installed in it. Some of it is correct and some of it is not. I am familiar with Christine with a K, Marcy, and her particular brand of psychopath. Has she surrendered? I'm not too sure. We just had far too many things to keep up on this week. If I get time, I'll have a look deeper into it. But I think it will kind of become irrelevant eventually, as the net is tightening and the noose around the rogue elements' necks by the minute, by the hour, or by the day, or by the week, by the minute, and it's happening on all levels. So some people, it might be what's important is the financial issue being solved. To some people, it's the child porn or the child sex slavery. To other people, it might be chemtrails, or other people, it might be something else. All those will eventually be addressed, but they can't all be done at the same time. And people have to really understand that. Will everyone personally be able to access the funds to remove themselves from debt and poverty? Not to my understanding, no. There will be projects that people can get involved in that will help them. Will there be other ways in which the trust will help people in certain ways? That's still to be clarified. Like I keep saying, there's that much that's going on. We just can't address a whole range of things because we have to take down the system first. And that's is clear as day in the intel this week. And yes, debt has been an issue that I got left with by the ex. Bundles of it. I've managed to work it down to manageable levels, even though it's still high. And I personally, my own personal opinion is that we should eliminate it altogether. Just wipe it clean. Why? Because we're owed vast amounts that can't be repaid. That is a way of repaying the people back. And yes, I can hear in my ear, well, I haven't got any debt, so how does that help me? Well, does it matter? It's helping us. There's the change of mindset I mentioned earlier. Not everything is about me and I. Going forward, it has to be, is it beneficial for we and us? We all have different personal things that we'd like addressed. You know, or certain things that, oh, well, they should, all the foreclosures should give them all the house back. Well, that's not going to be easy either. How can you give somebody a house back if somebody else has already bought it? That's then taking the house off somebody else. We're not going to solve everything, and people need to understand that. What the overall thing is to help as many people as possible. And eventually, once the first funding goes out, if that gets spread out sufficiently, it will then have a ripple effect to help the rest. You know, it's not a case of giving 330 million Americans X amount. It's not going to work. But we're going to have to see how it all plays out. Right, I received these batch of questions, 6 of them. That was part of the reference in the opening piece. And I've bundled all of the Kim or Kingdom of Mana into one batch. But the first 6 are from one person. And it goes as such. In the OYM show with Kim, she mentioned she's in contact with groups of people, quote unquote, who once believed a planetary reset was inevitable and it was decided humanity can turn this ship around. Who are these people? When was this decision made? Who has the power to reset this planet, the future? And that was question 1. So there's about 3 or 4 questions in there. Who are those group of people? What are you expecting me to reel off a list of names? There is a group of people who are aware of it. I did the Future of Humanity show, which is the first of the must-listen shows on the thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org, detailing that event. Who was going to do it? The councils, all of them. At one point they were going to pull the whole universe, as I understand it, because it was infected too badly, because it then has a ripple effect on the other branches of the tree, the universal tree. Now, this planet was destined for a reset. That I do know, and have known since as far back as 2008. Of course, the Cabal were going to reset it and escape via the Seine, until those same people who negotiated on behalf of humanity stepped in again. Gnosis Mr. Fulford has finally caught up with news saying that the Seine is no longer operable. Go figure. It was no longer operable from September of 2015. The decision was made over the last 4 or 5 years. It was rubber stamped within the last 18 months. That humanity will get a final chance to act in the right way amongst each other and towards the planet itself. The question is, can we do it? So, to answer your first question, go and listen to the Future of Humanity show. I covered this in great detail back in 2015. May have even been 2014. Kim also mentioned a group, again, quote unquote, had identified a few hundred individuals, which is not what was said. A few individuals, not a few hundred, who were considered genetically pure, quote unquote, enough for the new Earth. Have these few hundred individuals been asked whether they want to abandon this planet? Those individuals know far more than you can ever imagine. They came here for a reason. What I'm detecting from the first two questions is an element of envy. Why aren't I involved? Well, the reality is, on the reset of the planet, you were involved. Your subconscious passed the vote. And had you been more in tune with yourself, you would have known this. You have all the answers. Question 3. Kim and the rest of the team, quote unquote, are working very hard to remove certain individuals as well as the control system for the benefit of a very small percentage of organic souls, many of which are asleep. Why? What is the bigger picture? Well, the bigger picture is we have to go forward as a species in a better way. Otherwise, it gets reset and a new species comes on this planet. It's as simple as that. Again, this was outlined in the Future of Humanity show. It's been outlined in other shows. It's been outlined by other people. Shane the Runer, another one who mentioned it. So the key is removing the individuals that have stifled and stunted humanity's growth. we also haven't helped ourselves too much either. I always had the balance. But as the off-world element reduced to a handful after 2015, and the parents collapsed from 21 to 2, and the covens went down to 3 from 13, and the Illuminati no longer remained as one body all working together, but shredded into 5 factions, which is now appearing to be more like 20 factions, which are all fighting each other. Those people all had no interest in retaining humanity at all. The only ones that would have been left were slaves for them. 500,000 or 500 million, was it? 500 million on the Georgia Guidestones, which at the time was 10%, which is 90% gone. So once they removed the 90%, whether they were organic or inorganic, the ones that were left were then going to be transferred into transhumanism. So the biobots would then take over planet Earth altogether. And that's why we are working hard to remove certain individuals and that program. Which group or order does Kim belong to? She belongs in connection, because she works with me, to THI only. She's not a member of an order. She does not have a website. She does not have a blog. She does not have a forum. Contrary to people who keep sending me stuff. And will she come on the show and tell us about their true history? Whose true history are you referring to? I can't answer that question. She's been on the show 3 times. Will you please present a show with Kim to explain the blueprint of the sovereignty process she has offered to various nations? We've already done that. Perhaps you can use the Kingdom of Mana as an example, how it was formed, how Jesper Ellerman was voted as president and then became king. And the person goes on to say, I for one have many questions. Clearly you do. Kingdom of Mana was set up and declared sovereign by the Mana World Holding Trust. 2 separate entities. Kingdom of Mana is a country. Mana World Holding Trust is a trust fund. How has the restoration of the Sangreal progressed since you first mentioned in 2017? Please invite someone from this group to the show to talk about their true history. Keep asking about true history. I'm not too sure what true history you're referring to, and I have no further details on the progress of Sangreal. I apologise for that, but I just cannot cover everything. What exactly is stopping Kim from funding the People's Club right now? If she's being blocked, can you explain how this blocking is done? I seem to remember mentioning this several times in several shows over the last several months. And the clowns have the platform will have no funds. We don't have the platform, we'll have all the funds. And there's a Mexican standoff, but that Mexican standoff will not last too much longer. Because if we take control of all the banks, we will take control of all the platforms, and then the funding will be released. I hope that's the last time I answer that question. I'm sorry if I'm being a bit testy tonight, but some of these questions are just it's just not fair on the members, to be honest, because these questions have been answered multiple times. Why did the Kingdom of Mana take down their Facebook page? I have no idea. I don't follow the Kingdom of Mana or their Facebook page. The reason I ask is that there was a wonderful Q&A thread on the page that answered several burning questions that are asked repeatedly. Well, what are the burning questions? The Kingdom of Mana and the World Mana Holding Trust, I'm going to say this one more time, is a separate entity altogether. The Mana World Holding Trust declared the Kingdom of Mana a sovereign nation. Were they part of a team, Kim and Mr. Ellerman? Yes. Are they now? No. Conflict of interest decided that we were going to go in a different way. And that's all I will say on the matter. Mana, M-A-N-A, is not Kim. Kingdom of Mana is not Kim. Mana this, Mana that is not Kim. Mana World Holding, Mana with two N's, World Holding Trust is Kim only. For those who get mixed up with the manners, perhaps this song might help. Indeed. Right, let's get on with some more questions. Where are we next? Will the advanced technology of a Star Trek-like transporter system be released? If so, how will that affect the high-speed trains project? I'm not too sure on the Star Trek transporter system, but the high-speed train will be something equivalent. It's still, as I understand it, it won't require wheels. Won't require necessarily an underground track. A lot of it will be underground. There'll be some aspects of it above ground, but there's an awful lot of what people are going to find out at a later date is there's more miles of tunnels below our feet than there is roads on the surface. Why? Because of a previous civilization and current groups that have lived below our feet since we've been here. They have advanced technology. Why is Austin, Texas area being targeted with all the bombings? I think it's just kind of random. I've not been able to connect any dots to that yet, but it's been a busy week, as I said. I would suggest at this point it's more creating fear for the public. Or maybe it was just Texas's turn. You know, we've had issues in most other states, so why not Texas? This is the way these clowns think. Am I right in thinking at the moment the People's Club can only help people in America, and if so, is this likely to expand in all countries? Well, the People's Club is primarily for America. there's no saying, depending on the level of funding received, that the People's Club won't get wheeled out in Canada, for argument's sake, in the UK and Ireland. I have asked if it's possible to have funds for those 4 countries, and maybe we can then apply for funds at People's Club or something else in the other countries. But all 209 countries will receive funding for projects. You know, I would like, because of my links back to the UK and links to Ireland, and also technically links to Canada, I would like to see a People's Club start up there. Not that I will be running it, because I've got enough of a task trying to develop and wield out a successful model for America. You know, it's far easier to do a People's Club in other countries than America. It's a lot bigger and it's a lot more, has a lot more issues because of the programming and the levels of consumeristic mindsets. You know, going forward, we're going to have to change if we want a fairer and better society. So all countries will receive funding. At the moment, it's about getting rid of the elements that are blocking the funding, and once the funding is released, then we can deal with more personal issues. But at the moment, as I say, everything's the top end stuff, getting it all prepared. Will high advanced technology for the greater good of humanity that is suppressed by the cabal, like free energy, food replicators, and warp drive space travel, like in Star Trek and many others, being revealed and released this coming years, and be the solution to all our problems in the world, and end the misery, hunger, money, and our ego, that we can live in a moneyless society, that everything is free and no one is rich or poor anymore. I think we're a long way off the latter. I think, well, in essence, the bullet train is advanced technology for the majority of the world. They have been, the cabal and elites have been using that particular technology for a long time, which is why you very rarely see someone known as being famous on a plane or a train. They travel away from the useless eaters. So, food replicators, I'm not too sure at this point whether they're actually real or not. There is 3D printers. They're already out. They're being used in hospitals and other places around the world, that have been used in China to build 10 homes completed per day. Purpose-built 3D printer, building 10 homes in one day, all finished. So, you know, my own personal opinion is I don't think the Western world is ready for replicators. I think it will lead to chaos. I think we have to have a change of mindset in the Western world style of thinking before we run amok with replicators and printing this out and printing that out. I just don't think we are responsible enough, and that applies to all the Western countries. People are free to disagree with that. That's fine. That's just my opinion. As for warp drive for space travel, again, that would be nice, but there's a conflict of opinion, as I understand it. One element is stressing that, yes, we will have the advanced, and other elements are suggesting there may not be a spaceport for planet Earth for a long time, purposefully. because they feel, or certain elements feel, that we need to learn to get along with each other before we start spreading our special brand of chaos elsewhere. And to be honest, I tend to agree with that. Can we turn it around quickly? Well, that's up to us, isn't it? In essence, our species is childlike. We give away all our power. We dissolve our own personal responsibility and leave it in the hands of psychopaths. We have to stop doing that. We don't like people from the next state. We don't like people from the next country. We don't like people of a different colour, or a different sexuality, or a different gender. The list is endless. We have to go some way into correcting that. We call people foreigners and immigrants, or even worse, illegal immigrants on your own planet. I've never heard anything so ridiculous in all my life. Illegal immigrants on your own planet. So that mindset, and I've mentioned this a number of times tonight because it's important, that mindset that we have, and it's largely down to programming. You have to, on an individual layer, change the program. Benefit of all, not benefit just of America, or benefit of the UK, or the benefit of Ireland, or just the benefit of Canada. No, it has to be the benefit of Muslims, the benefit of Jewish people, everyone. Because once that's achieved, then war is eliminated on this planet once and for all, for the first time in thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Then we're ready to go out in space with a new model of peace and integration, not death and destruction. Any additional info on the timing or content of Hawkins' last paper just released on parallel universes? No, I apologise for that. I haven't read it, and I haven't even had a chance to see any brief details on it. Mr. Hawking gave a lot of knowledge. It was like Einstein, he had gaps. Whether he had gaps because he was told to have gaps, only time will tell. But he was a fairly brilliant man. And the questions, there will always be questions around him, particularly over the last 15, 20 years, when he appeared to be being used for diversion purposes. Maybe that was part of his remaining alive as what basically is a biobot. I remember when I first asked that question, going back 18 months, who is the biobot in the public arena? And no one got it. Because they don't make that link. Stephen Hawking, basically his whole system is shut down. He's lived 20 years with a condition that normally doesn't last 20 weeks or 20 months. So basically his whole vessel was taken over by a computer. That is transhumanism. He just didn't make the link. But, you know, he's advanced the field of science, and we should pay homage to his contribution. But sadly, these people who are in the genius field, like the Einsteins and the Teslas, all get co-opted or used as COINTELPRO. And spit out on a load of diversionary science, so you won't work out what's real. Is the all-seeing eye a representation of the AI? Not necessarily. Depends which one. The majority is of the Eye of Horus and Osiris and all that rubbish, and that Isis. None of them are good. I don't care which particular other alternative media person that promotes that stuff, but I won't be one of them. Those clowns in Egypt have set humanity back 5,000 years. I read on multiple websites that former French President Sarkozy was arrested on suspicion of fraud. Is it really for fraud? There's more going on. Well, I think I covered that earlier. Is he, or was he, a member of the cabal? Absolutely he was. Will the genocide of cancer increase with the implementation of 5G? Again, it's not something I've had the chance to read up on. So you'll probably be able to tell me more than I can tell you on that. Literally my time just gets swamped now. I do have a full-time job, and a full-time job looking after Chloe as well. And a radio show and 2 pages and a foundation and the Intel and all the other stuff. Like Kim, I've got about 7 hats also. So sometimes I can't keep up with certain things. I would suggest going forward that the harsh elements of that will be stopped, if that's found to be the case. Once we're starting to clear out, I've already made a proposal that we have a multi-discipline team to investigate all levels of technology. Is it beneficial to humanity, or is it not? There's no grey area, or shouldn't be. It's either beneficial or it isn't. And if it's not, then it really needs to be scrapped and deleted permanently. So there's no other chances of rogue elements going forward with it. Because if you just hide it underground, there'll be another group in 70 years' time playing Rothschilds and Chinese elders and Illuminati and parents and covens. It'll just repeat itself. So I'm hoping that proposal goes forward, where it's there is a raft of people with knowledge of technology. Also, I would like to see some members of the alternative community included in it. I keep mentioning about the alternative community playing a role, and I think we should. The reality is, many of us know more than the politicians. You'd be amazed at how little they know. So the idea of some of them knowing about Operation Overcast, the Operation Paperclip, I think most people are familiar with that now. There's a whole heap of MK Ultras, Hotel California, and a few others they have no idea of. But the people in the alternative media do. And so we can push forward certain things and ideas for them to look at and eradicate a lot of the nonsense that's been going on in underground bunkers and research centres in the middle of nowhere, and naval bases in the middle of nowhere, literally nowhere near water. Why would you need a naval base in the middle of the effing desert? It doesn't make sense. That nonsense has to stop. So we one of the other things, maybe should have mentioned this in the op-ed, or maybe I'll leave that till next week. We're kind of running on time now. Have you heard from Peter Ayres? I'm glad you reminded me, because I have literally forgotten about Peter, and I'll have to make contact. The weeks, yeah, we're in April next week. It only seems like a few weeks ago it was Christmas. It's this year. I don't know what people think. It's just been a complete blur. Another week and we're a quarter of the way through the year. It's unbelievable. Are there safeguards in place to prevent the cabal from stealing high-speed train funds once they have been released? Yes. Are there conditions attached to ensure these funds are spent on the trains? Yes. What is to stop governments handing out bogus contracts to fictitious supply companies, as happens now? They may try it, but the new system, once fully online and with the control of the platforms, will indicate where the funds are going. Oops. No more backdoors, no more mirror accounting, no more offshore accounts where they can hide funds. It'll all be viewable. That's why they're blocking, and that's why they don't want it. They want to carry on their rogue criminal enterprise. We don't. Right, I can't think of anything else now. I hope you enjoyed the show. I apologise if I sound a little bit testy on certain questions, but people have to understand you're not helping me and you're not helping the other members. We're just repeating questions. The show's here every week. It contains a lot of information, and it covers a plethora of different platforms, whether it be financial, be it cabal, be it sometimes ET, you name it, environmental things. It just got, it's a mixture of a whole range of items in the alternative media. As I've said, and I will repeat, I do not mind answering questions on the show, no matter how difficult or awkward, like some of the ones were tonight, or leading. But the question is, why are you asking leading questions when those questions have already been answered? That's game playing. We're not in the right time for wasting people's time with game playing. We're just not. We are nearing the end and the start of a new beginning. If that's all your energy is being pushed forward to, is playing games, asking leading questions, asking repeat questions, and wasting people's time, then the problem is you. But by all means, put your questions in, and hopefully I do not get more questions asking me the difference between Mana and do they have a blog site, and etc, 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 because I have had enough from them. It's just not fair on the other members. They want to find out more deeper aspects, and the show's been taken up with repeat stuff. We need to move forward and start coming up with some solutions. Because as the intel pointed out, things are very, very close now to breaking out on many, many levels. The gauntlet has been thrown down to the cabal. You either fly straight and come and negotiate your surrender, or we're going to sell all of your assets. Given we already control the stock of it, that's your game over, because you will not then have control of the currency. Oops. So, I may do a show Sunday. I completely forgot about an evening with Thomas, but maybe it might be better if I give it a miss this Sunday. And we see where we're at next week. Yeah, it would probably be best is I might could do with a rest probably. And I hope you've enjoyed the show, but try and take a step back and think about where you as an individual are going. What is your mindset? How can you help yourself, which then ultimately helps others? You can't go on wanting to be part of the funding with the mindset of the old ways, because ultimately that will fail. And that's probably the most ridiculous thing we can ever do, is repeat what they've done. Let's all be a lot nicer to each other. Not everyone likes each other, I get that. But let's not make that into major issues like we've had this week. It was unnecessary. And again, wasted more of my time. Right, this has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. This coming week could really be interesting. The news might get more interesting. And it's time for us all to light up, methinks. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.